Oh, yeah, it's exactly 30. Hello.
So you're starting with the ladies.
No, I will start with you.
Start with them.
Okay, it's better. Okay, then we have to instruct them.
Yeah.
Linda and Jean, do you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
We are here, Eduardo and me. in
Yes.
front of And we kindly ask you to start with your statements. Why do we need a declaration? And then Eduardo will follow. I would like to welcome all guests on the Zoom and in the room. There are not so many because they all are busy at the moment. And welcome Linda McDonald and Jean Sarsen, the two leaders of our working group on non-state torture and authors of the book Women Unsilenced. Please, Linda, take the floor.
Jean's going first.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we just made the decision last night. Okay, so I've written a statement to reflect all the work that the working group has done and that Linda and I have done over the last 30 years. So I am answering the question, why do we need a UN declaration to stop torture by non-state actors? So answering this question means sharing Linda and my 30 years of experience that torture traffickers exist within families who perpetrate such crimes against their daughters or spouse within local to international organized and formal criminal networks. This knowledge began for us in 1993 when a woman contacted Linda and me for support, saying, I've been water tortured, electric shocked, caged, hung, burnt, whipped, beaten, and cut, torture, raped, and with guns, knives, and animals, thousands of times, torture impregnated and aborted, drugged and rented out since I was 2 years old, thousands of times, and more, saying I did not know I was a person until you told me I was. More reasons why a declaration is essential. One, women from many countries tell us that the non-state torture crimes they suffered are invisibilized. Consequently, non-state torture is the most underreported crime committed against women and girls. A declaration is needed to end such global discrimination. Two, ending non-state torture crimes fits into the UN ODC strategy for gender equality and women's empowerment. It says there is a need to double the efforts to eradicate violence against women and girls, a message spoken of yesterday by Jean Lemieux. Number three, a declaration will promote women and girls' equality, ending their marginalization. As women say, the stigma they experience because of the non-state torture crimes done to them goes into systemic destruction of their self, severely impacting on their ability to participate in the world decades later. Four, a declaration will assist exposing the modus operandi of non-state torturers who transported women as children and adults by car, in car trunks, hidden in trucks, forced into containers, held captive on boats and dragged in the water in a cage, taken on planes, dropped off at bus stops, waiting for other torture traffickers to pick them up, and transported to modeling and TV studios where pornographic torture crimes were committed against them as children or adults. 5, a declaration stopping non-state torture crimes will expose the corruption embedded in informal criminal networks involving other family members, like-minded friends and neighbors, professionals, and expose state actors directly or indirectly involved. 6, a declaration will contribute global efforts to promote just and inclusive societies, support the resilience of women and girls to know they have the right not to be subjected to torture as stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 7, Alex explains the impact of non-state torture crimes, saying, as a victim, it is simple. Anyone who has been through or cares about anyone who has been through non-state torture would say it is a crime. Unless this crime is named torture, I won't be an actual person. I will always be the dirty object with no rights. 8, a transformation can occur. I close with Elizabeth's quote, whose art you can view and who witnessed the opening of the exhibition yesterday. She said, so this is what it feels like to be alive and in this world. This is the meaning of a just and inclusive society and the priority reason for a declaration to stop the most underreported non-state torture crimes committed against women and girls globally. Thank you for listening and for being present. Thank you.
So I'm Linda McDonald, and I work with Jean and Persons Against Non-State Torture in Canada. And we're also in the working group, as Inga has said. So as we hear from Elizabeth's words, we know that the declaration on non-state torture is definitely for the women who have endured non-state torture all around the world. The other reason is because non-state torture is still a very invisible crime globally. And Jean and I know that because when we talk about torture that happens in homes, in human trafficking, in prostitution, in pornography, people are always surprised to think that women endure non-state torture or torture at all. It's not a crime that women have really been thought to have endured. So it means then that the perpetrators are invisible. And that's a very important reason for the declaration, is to make these invisible torturers visible so that they don't go about the world hunting women and girls with impunity, because that's what they're doing right now. We know very clearly what state torture is. You can talk to anyone on the street corner and people understand that state torture occurs. It occurs all around the world, and it primarily happens to men, although some women do endure state torture. But when you start talking about non-state torture, people's faces go blank. Even though the UN definition of torture includes a section on discrimination for any reason based on discrimination of any kind. And that's why we're focusing on the discrimination that women endure based on patriarchy and misogyny, where women are tortured just because they're women, just because they're girls, because patriarchy has used violence against women as a way to control them and to maintain the domination and subordination. And torture, of course, is the most effective tool for that. So that's where the misogyny comes in. And the other reality is that when women and girls try to talk about non-state torture or the torture that they've endured, their crimes are minimized to assault or aggravated assault. And we know that from our country of Canada, that when we've gone to them many times, they say that aggravated assault or assault are adequate to name the torture that happens to women and girls. And yet when men are tortured by states, we would never call it aggravated assault or assault. So that's another form of discrimination. Now, 10 years ago, almost to the day, the Vienna Declaration on Femicide was declared. And it was November of 2012. So that's 10 years. It's amazing. So here we are 10 years later, asking for the same in Vienna for torture that happens by non-state actors. What's happened with the Vienna Declaration is it's brought cultural and attitudinal transformation about femicide. People understand the term now. We're starting to get laws against femicide. And we know that the declaration has worked in our country of Canada because as feminists, there's a group of us that are lobbying now to have femicide included in our criminal code. So that's the power of the declaration. It brings it to a global reality for all of the world to understand that a crime has existed. And so the next step is to bring in the link declaration, because femicide is in the femicide declaration, they mention that torture happens to women. So now we have to really expand that statement and say what kinds of torture and how does it happen to women? And that's what the Declaration on Non-State Torture would do. It would link with that declaration and bring the torture really visible. And then it brings the necessary steps to develop and enforce legislation, to bring awareness and education, to start collecting data on non-state torture, and then to promote non-state torture informed care. When we start really understanding how serious the crime of non-state torture is and how serious the perpetrators are, how intentional their cruelty is, we will indeed start preventing femicide. And we will recognize non-state torture sooner so that women and children will be removed from such situations at more quickly, and they won't have to endure the years and years and years of torture that they come to Jean and I and tell us about. Many of them are in their 20s or in their 30s before they start talking about it. And they were in fact most often born into families where the torture started from the time they were infants. So a declaration ensures the efforts are from all levels of society, from the personal to the local to the state and to the global. And we sadly know that infants are very common victims of non-state torture. And as Inga said yesterday, children do endure torture. So that brings me to my last real statement, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. I have a pin wearing to recognize it. And 16.2 says that for children, to apply to children, we must end abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence and torture against children. So if we recognize the SDG 16.2, we really need the Declaration on Non-State Torture to bring awareness to that so that no one is left behind, the children in particular. And they deserve better in this world to be invisible in the torture that they're enduring now. Thank you.
Thank you. We had problems to unmute ourselves. Thank you for your insights, Jean and Linda, and your special knowledge about non-state torture and why we need. And now I would like to ask Eduardo Vettere, Executive Director of the 8th, 9th, and 11th UN Crime Congress of Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, and former Director of the Division of Treaty Affairs of UNODC. Eduardo, how do you see this problem? How can we approach it? And why should we approach it?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And of course, this is an issue which will be of great relevance, not only because the large number, as criminologists say, of this phenomenon is enormous, invisible, quoting what our previous speakers say, but also because I think that times are changing. And I think that the international community has the responsibility to react and to respond to those changes. So let me also recall that why we need a declaration. This is the main question. I think that previous speakers, starting from yesterday, have already given reasons not to speak of the latest two speakers. It's fantastic ladies that have been fighting and working for more than 30 years, documenting what was happening on the part of violent by non-state actors and crime by non-state actors, researching, writing books, being very much enthusiastic to participate in this very difficult, on these very difficult issues, to raise global awareness about the importance of this issue and about the need for appropriate action on international level. This is why we need a declaration. We need a declaration to go from research, from collection of data, analysis, to a more practical action be taken first, hopefully at the international level with a declaration, and after also at the national level in order to implement whatever is going to be included in the declaration. So this is a very important thing. Let's also not forget that action against torture, despite the fact that it was included already in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights as a very serious violation of human rights, torture, numerous great punishment, but it took quite a number of years for the international community to have first a declaration against torture and human and degrading treatment of punishment. And after 10 years of the adoption of the declaration by the General Assembly, to adopt a convention against torture. And of course, this happened already quite a number of years ago. The declaration was adopted in 1975. The convention was adopted 10 years later in 85. At the time, the phenomenon of organized crime, of non-state actors operating all around the world, it was not so recrudescent as it is today. The international community still had done very, very little to prevent this phenomenon. And of course, action was focused and concentrated on state actors. This means government officials. So the time now have changed. We have to respond to these changes in our world and focus attention, much more attention, and not only attention, but also action against this more recrudescent phenomenon linked to organized crime, linked to trafficking of girls, even to sexual exploitation of children for purposes of which are not the proper one in terms of education and in terms of proper growing of our future generation. This is why we need a declaration. Now, in my view, there are two major options to follow. Action specifically on torture by non-state actors. And this was mentioned by Arne yesterday in mentioning that probably the time has come from more action in connection with torture by non-state actors as a basic violation of human rights. So this could be one possibility. The other possibility would be to link it, as we have been doing in our days, and we have been trying to do in the previous seminar, in the previous workshop that we had here, to which I also have participated, to link it to the question of gender violence and the question of femicide. In this connection, I have to recall also that just a few days ago, the third committee adopted or recommended for adoption by the General Assembly a very important resolution on the field of advancement of women, the item of advancement of women, entitled Intensification of Efforts to Prevent and Eliminate all Forms of Violence Against Women and Girls, Gender Stereotypes and Negative Social Norms. This is a very comprehensive resolution in which for the first time terms like femicide and other things are mentioned and are included in the resolution, in which there are specific measures to be taken at the international and national level related questions to prevent such phenomena. And I think that a lot can be drawn from this that most hopefully will be adopted by the plenary of the General Assembly in December in terms of further action to be taken in a declaration on related. Finally, I think that since times have changed, I mentioned that 50 years in the case of the declaration, 40 years in the case of the convention. Now there are a number of conventions also related to transnational organized crime, related to trafficking with the protocols of trafficking of women and girls, on migrant workers, etc. I think that all those things have been developed here in Vienna. I think that it's very, very good if the Commission for Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice would put these issues as some kind of priority issues for consideration at the next session, and that through this work of awareness raising, through further activities that can be envisaged, planned, and executed between now and the time of the Commission, also the part of the Alliance, etc., it will be possible to raise enough interest of member states in order to take serious action against this phenomenon. Thank you for the attention and best wishes for your future activities.
Thank you very much for the wonderful, elegant advices. And it's a big task you put on our shoulders, but we know that we can count on you as well for supporting us in the next steps. I see Anna Alvazzi del Pate, the chair of the Crime Alliance online. Perhaps she would like to join us, comment. Hello, Anna, still in Helsinki.
Hello, greetings from the Helsinki Central Library. It's a very nice place. I have to speak slowly because it is a library after all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Ginny. Thank you, Linda. This was exactly what we wanted to achieve, to put together the main elements for why we need the declaration. We start catalyzing quite a lot of interest around this initiative, and we are very, very pleased to see that the pillars, the constituting blocks are becoming clear. And this will allow us to put together an interesting program for the event that we are organizing on the 7th of December. This event should really help us to start thinking concretely on what this declaration will contain. And now the basis that we have collected through your inputs is crucial. So thank you again, and sorry for being very, very concise. I hope to see you soon. I will be there tomorrow. Bye, thank you.
And don't wonder why we are sitting here. The screen is quite high, so we are sitting nearly on the floor. It's quite strange for us as well. Thank you all for participating, and yeah, see you tomorrow again at 12:30. Jean and Linda, would you like to say some comments as well?
Yeah, I would, if I can control my emotions enough. I just find it very moving to know that there's a group of caring people in this world that are recognizing the suffering that Elizabeth and all the women that have been on the videos for them to be visibilized. It's very moving for us to have gotten to this point so that we're sitting down talking about how important it is that the torture of women and girls be recognized as a human rights violation and a crime. So I just thank all of you for being so caring.
And I would like to say what Linda said, you know, new information, like Eduardo mentioned, many things have changed since the UN CAT and the issue of torture victimization came to our knowledge. So it becomes it was a shocking image for Linda and I 30 years ago when the first woman came, because we knew a lot about what assault and aggravated assault was, since we were both born into to fathers who were very violent, and also both had experienced sexualized violence, myself as a 5-year-old and Linda as a young adult. So we knew about the reality of violence in relationships or among people. So coming to the issue of torture was a very new reality that has changed our world view. And maybe it is changing people's worldview as they go through the exhibition. I hope they stop and think about it, because even though we may not be directly affected, we are all affected in some way about the type of world we create for the future. So I want to thank you, all the working group, and everyone who stops by, who stops and thinks and listens to the women and thinks about the world we're creating. And I am certainly looking forward to the work to develop a declaration, whatever that will take. So thank you, everyone, for your support and for being there for ourselves and for all the women and children who have been suffering in silence. It is very emotional. And thanks again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No problem.
I'm
You managed it easily, so.